Hey Credit Warriors, Credit Shifu here, and today we are going to be talking about why credit monitoring services such as Credit Karma, these consumer level credit monitoring services, aren't always accurate. Actually, they're almost never accurate. But anyway, and just to illustrate the fact of that, we're going to show you on Credit Karma, my scores are in the 770s, 775 you can see there. But here I have a credit score pulled for a mortgage, and you can see, well, if you have a close-up, you'll be able to see my Experian score is 739, my TransUnion score is 723, and my Equifax score is 739. So quite a big difference. We're talking about 35 point, at least in one of those cases, about 40 point difference between my Credit Karma scores and my actual real credit scores pulled in a hard pull for a mortgage. So I don't want to say that Credit Karma is bad or anything. I would still advise you, Credit Karma is a great service to use, and all those other ones that allow you to check your credit score on your credit report. And we will talk about why it's still useful later on in the video, but let's first take a look at why it isn't that accurate. So Credit Karma uses the VantageScore 3.0 scoring model. And this is different to what the majority of banks and lenders use for credit scoring, which would be FICO scores, which stands for the Fair Isaac and Company. That's the sort of credit score that has dominated the market for the last several decades. In 2006, the three credit bureaus actually came out with the VantageScore model, and that was to, as a challenge to FICO with their own credit scoring model, but actually still the majority of banks do actually use the FICO scores. So VantageScore does actually weight the credit factors of things that affect your score differently. So you know that kind of pie chart that we show of the FICO score, and you can see that payment history, for example, is 35% of how your score is worked out. Well, payment history, guess what? With VantageScore, payment history is 40%. So it's weighted more. It's a heavier factor. So if you have a really good payment history, it would be common sense to assume that your Vantage score is going to be a bit higher than your FICO score because on-time payments carry more weight. Likewise, if you have missed payments, probably they're going to drag your score down more than they would drag a FICO score down because it's weighted at 5% more. Okay, so for people who have all on-time payments on their credit report, they're probably going to have a higher score on Credit Karma than they would on FICO because on-time payments are worth more with a VantageScore 3.0. Now that's just one factor. There are several other factors, so it's a little bit complicated. All right, there's quite a lot of factors, and you'd have to do a really deep dive to get into it. And this is just what's made public because some of the algorithms are actually secret. The very latest scores, 3.0, isn't even the latest version. That's just what they've released for consumers for an educational credit score. But you can kind of see the reasoning. Okay, so your Vantage score, it tends to be higher, especially if you've had all on-time payments. Now, the next factor, which is a reason why Credit Karma scores tend to be a little bit different from FICO scores, is that they only pull 2 of the 3 credit bureaus. Okay, so they only pull Equifax and TransUnion. There's another one called Experian, and what most lenders do with the FICO score, it's called a tri-merge. They take the 3 scores and they merge them together, and they get an average of the 3. Okay, it's called a tri-merge. Credit Karma doesn't do this. It just gives you 2 scores from Equifax and TransUnion, and those are educational scores anyway, not the latest algorithm. So yeah, you don't get that tri-merge. In addition to that, another factor is that Credit Karma is only updated once a week, so it can sometimes be slow to update when there are changes with your credit report and credit scores. Now, another thing that should be pointed out is that these are educational scores, like we've said, and even scores that you get directly from the credit bureaus that are free, like Experian, for example, are educational scores as well. So, for example, if I go log into my Experian account, this is the one that Credit Karma doesn't give you, it gives me 776. Now, I know from this mortgage application that my Experian score is 739, so that's not accurate either. And that's because that is an educational score that is a generic credit score. It's not a credit score for any specific type of loan application, okay? And this is quite important. This is really the kind of crux point here, okay? So different types of loan applications use different algorithms. There's a credit score for a credit card, for a car loan, for a mortgage, and a credit score for a mortgage is going to be the strictest algorithm out there, okay? Because a mortgage is like a 30-year commitment of these people, this person making repayments. They have to look at loads of financial information, bank statements, everything, and they use the most strict algorithm for the credit score, all right? So how do you actually see your real credit scores for the different types of loan applications actually get that correct, accurate info? Well, if you go to myfico.com and you pay $60 for a one-time credit score and credit report, you can see credit scores for different types of applications, whether it's credit card, whether it's mortgage, whether it's car loan. Okay, these scores technically from myfico.com, they are still educational scores, so they still may be a little bit different to what a lender would get you, but they are reasonably accurate. Okay, so you can get a very good idea from myfico.com. That is the place that I would recommend if you want an accurate score. But there is one other way, and that's simply going to a mortgage broker, going to a car loan place or whatever, months before you actually want to take out the mortgage or want to buy the car, and just asking them to do a pull on your credit and basically go through the application. With a mortgage, you can do the sort of pre-qualification application relatively quickly. Okay, it only takes about half an hour, all right, to kind of input your info. They do a credit check, etc., and they will give you a credit score, and then normally after a week or so you'll get a letter through the mail like this that gives you the credit scores that they have pulled. But normally they'll actually tell you the score over the phone or to your face, and they're normally happy to do this because if you want to go and look for a house, for example, you normally need a pre-qualification letter anyway before the real estate agent is willing to show you houses, because they want to make sure that you're a serious applicant who actually has access to funding for it. So don't think that you're doing this if you're not actually going to get a loan in anytime soon is necessarily bad, because people do it all the time because they need pre-qualification letter to start their house hunt, and maybe they don't buy a house for like another year, but they want that letter. So you can do it that way. And so I recommend doing this maybe 6 months before you actually want to buy the house or want to buy the car, so that you can check your credit, or alternatively you can do it through myfico.com. Just know that it's not 100% accurate, it's close, but not 100%. And then, you're going to know if there's any problems with your credit score and credit report, and what you can do about them. Maybe it's bringing down utilization, maybe you have some negative items that you might be able to take care of through credit repair in that 6-month period until you actually want to, apply for your loan for real. It matters much more with car loans and mortgages than it does with credit cards, okay? Because credit cards, normally the interest rate doesn't really matter, because most people don't really plan on borrowing on a credit card, or even if they do, they would do it on a sort of a 0% introductory balance credit card, or perhaps they borrow on a card that has interest rate and then they transfer it onto a balance transfer card to get 0% for 12 months or so. Just a few examples there. So people who are smart don't borrow on credit cards, all right, because the interest rates are like 20%. But with a car loan and with a mortgage, you are actually going to be paying the interest. There's no way to avoid it. Obviously, interest rates are much lower with mortgages now. For prime rate, it's more like 4.5%, but you are actually going to pay that money. So you really do need to pay attention to your credit score. This is why it's important, because even 1 or 2 points either way can put you into the low, can lower you down one tier, and then you're not going to get as good interest rates. And 0.5% or something now can equal like $10,000, $20,000 over like 30 years. So you really could save a lot of money by having a good credit score. So for mortgages and car loans, it really is important to accurately know what your score is. For credit cards, I would say using Credit Karma, using all these other services is absolutely no problem, because for credit cards you don't need to necessarily be that accurate, because it's not going to save you thousands of dollars over 20, 30 years, because we don't even recommend going into debt on credit cards anyway, okay? And the interest rates are so high that if you borrow on cards, you just, you're a bit of a fool, to be honest. Sorry if anyone is in debt on credit cards. It can, I know there can be unforeseen circumstances, but ideally you don't borrow on them. So to kind of bring it full circle, Credit Karma is not accurate. It is a generic educational score, but it's still a very good tool to use. So I would encourage you to use it, or whatever your preferred, credit checking website is. It's a very valuable service. And about 10 or 15 years ago, you wouldn't even be able to check these scores for free. I think Credit Karma started in 2008. Before that, it was hard to get credit scores for free. And now, you can get them everywhere, although they are educational scores rather than 100% accurate scores. All right, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. And if you are looking out to improve your credit, we will put one of our favorite credit building cards, the Capital One Platinum and also the Capital One Secured MasterCard, in the links below. If your credit score has been damaged, etc., one of those 2 cards could help you build your credit score up to the level where you want it to be, where you can apply for mortgages and car loans and all those kind of things that are going to be important in life. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you're new. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.